Thank you. I'm Pat McGow. I'm an attorney at Miller Canfield. I've worked with the city on a number of the bond issues in the past, and I'll address some of the questions that were addressed over here. First, the MTF funds. Jason was talking about the Act 51 monies, and just to remind everybody, Act 51 is the state statute for gas and weight taxes, and that comes to the city, and as you know, some of that goes for major roads, some of it goes for local. This particular type of bond issue is one that's commonly used by cities and villages to pay for street improvements, and it's using that gas and weight tax money that comes back to the city. One of the benefits is that has historically been a pretty stable source of revenue, and it is not coming out of city general fund. So this is money that comes to the city from the state from the gas and weight taxes. So looking back the last 5 years, Jason was correct that, I have numbers showing what the city had from about 2014 to 16. It was pretty stable around $4 million a year. And then you may remember we've had a lot of discussion in this state about gas tax increases, and the legislature really did not do very much. There was a slight gas tax increase that went into effect in the last couple of years, and we've seen those gas and weight tax revenues to the city go up to $4.8 million in 2017, $5.7 million in 2018, and it was about $6.2 in 2019. Using the city's fiscal year. So there has been an increase in those Act 51 funds that have come to city as well as other local units. Earlier this year we had COVID and people quit driving. I think there was a lot of concern about Act 51 revenues. You guys know you were asking about revenue sharing and what that meant. There was a slight dip off in Act 51 revenues in April and May, but it wasn't as significant as what people thought. So to answer your question, the revenues have actually gone up compared to where they were 5 years ago. This year with COVID, I don't know how they pan out at the end of the year, but that gas tax increase, the slight increase that we did get a couple years ago, did lead to an uptick in those Act 51 revenues. The city did its last road bond issue, I want to say it was 2008, that was for Goddard Road, and as the mayor indicated, that's now been paid off. So some of the money that had been used from the Act 51 funds to pay those bonds is available and can be used to pay these, although this is obviously a much larger project. So you had referenced the 50% number. So one of the things, there's a couple of benefits in doing bonds under this statute. One of them is that regardless of what the city's credit rating is, which has certainly come up in the last several years, when cities issue bonds under this statute, they get to pledge the gas and weight taxes, and you get the benefit of the state's credit rating on the highway fund. And that's a better credit rating. It's in the double A category. And the reason for that is that you're not allowed to pledge more than half of the revenues you get in any given year. So there's a limit, and that's why that was referenced in the resolution. Now, you're not spending all your Act 51 monies on these bonds, but there's a built-in limit which allows you to get a better credit rating and borrow at a lower interest cost. So essentially, when these bonds are issued, they pledge the gas and weight tax money, and as Jason was just talking about, these bonds don't count against the city's debt limit. So to answer your question, Councilman, you were asking about the city's debt, which actually has been going down over the years. Right now, the number that was used was $55 million. Of that, about $30 million is water and sewer related debt. That is, part of it's the county, part of it's the DUA authority. Some of that counts towards the debt limit, some of it doesn't. The TIFA has about $5.7 million in bonds which are payable from tax increment revenues. The Brownfield Authority has about $11.8 million, most of which is paid from brownfield revenues, but as you know, the Midtown project has required the general fund to support that. And then the Building Authority has about $4.7 million of debt. So when you add it up, that totals $55 million, but the city debt limit, which is 10% of the SEV, would allow you to issue up to $167 million of debt under that debt limit. Only about $35 million of the $55 million that is currently outstanding counts towards that debt limit. So you're at, this is based on I think June 30th of 19, you're at about 1.1%. So it's significantly less than the legal limits. Of course, we always say it doesn't matter what the legal limit is, can you afford to pay it back, which is I think the question you asked. And that's really, since many of these come from different sources, there's revenues available to pay those. And this is set up so that there will be Act 51 monies unless, you know, those revenues get cut by more than half. But to your point, those monies have to go to pay these bonds first, and that would not be available for other projects. So that's the policy consideration. But as of right now, in the track record, the debt service on this bond issue is significantly less than what the annual MTF revenues are to the city and have been for a long time.
The issue is still, are we willing to spend the $24 million on 2 roads when we have other roads in this city? Plus, $24 million is not chump change, okay? And we keep talking about we can go up to this. Well, that's what happens with a lot of people. Their credit is so good and they go right up to it, and next thing you know, the world falls out from underneath them. And what I'm trying to say now is, like we said a couple of meetings ago, we need to cut back for a little while. Is it an emergency at this time to do those roads? I ride those roads too. Sure, they're bad. But the question is, are they bad enough to take away from maybe other needs at this time to spend $24 million? And I'm going to have some questions in reference to the materials and stuff they use, because the last people that stood up here at the council years ago to do the road on Pardee, when they resurfaced the road then, all the promises, and you saw what happened on those promises. Everybody makes a promise, but anytime you want, just file bankruptcy and walk away. That's all you got to do. But my concern is can this city at this time afford to keep adding money? And it's all projections. Yeah, there's a lot of projections. But my concern is, even with the state, if the state has problems, and the question to you then, let's say that we do get cut back quite a bit. Who's going to pay the bill then?
Yeah, ultimately the way this works is that you're required to use all available Act 51 monies to pay the debt service, and if those are not sufficient, then the city general fund covers the difference. Yes.
So the
The
next
city,
thing you know,
you're absolutely right.
we're out
The
on
city,
them again.
the city is on the hook to pay the debt.
Yeah,
Yes.
for 2 roads. Okay, thank you.
Questions probably for the mayor.
Sure.
I'm gonna be like you and forget.
So,
So I'm gonna be like you and forget.
uh,
What's the useful life of the road with the repair? I mean, how long would we expect the road to last?
with the repair that we're proposing, I'll defer to Alan. 20 years, Alan?
Yeah, 20 years.
20 years? Yeah, about 20 years.
Okay.
So they don't, they typically, I believe we cannot borrow beyond 15 because of that. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah.
15 is the max we can borrow the term.
Is that a guarantee?
Well, there is a difference. Again, I'm not the technical guy. I'll have to bring Alan back up here, but this spec is an MDOT approved spec. I don't think that there's anything experimental about it. Obviously, we don't know who's going to be awarded the bid because we haven't gone out to bid yet. But I know that typically the companies that have been bidding on the larger projects like Goddard and Beach Daily, they've been, you know, larger Michigan-based companies that have been doing business here for a long time. I think if you go back to the previous issuance of Goddard and Pardee, the company was out of Chicago. It was not proven technology. I think we were all caught up in the recycling buzzword at that time, and it was going to be environmentally friendly, and, you know, to some extent we took the bait. We did start having problems almost immediately, and, you know, we've been dealing with it ever since. I don't think you're going to have that based on the specs that we're speccing in, but again, I would defer your ultimate question to Alan because he's the technical guy, so.
I just have a general comment. While I do understand Councilman Ramik's concerns about the future being unknown, I think that we should base decisions on, you know, the conditions that are current, because those are what we do know. By the same token, if things could fall next year as far as Act 51, they could also rise like they have been. So I just think we need to look at what is currently going on.
I have one other question.
Oh, sure.
If we approve the bond tonight, the project will be brought back to us, at which time we could approve or not approve
That is
the
correct.
project at the time. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Bzura.
so the resolution is to agree or to approve the issuance of the bonds. You're saying that the bonds, they won't go to work on getting to that point until after a project is brought forward and after we've picked a vendor and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I'll let Pat speak to the.
I would assume part of this, you mentioned timing is current interest rates, but maybe you could walk us through what
Yeah.
happens after
Sure,
tonight?
to the question about the bonds and the project, so this action item here tonight is a resolution to authorize the bonds up to $24 million.